Welcome back to another video. Today, I will be discussing the shootings over in Minneapolis, specifically the homeless that were injured in the Minneapolis shootings recently. Using ground news and their summary, we can see here that they have 9 sources listed, from 7 days ago to 8 days ago. And below that, we see the breakdown for bias, and then looking at factuality, we see a very high factuality percentage. Which is good for this kind of story. It's sad that these shootings happened, and these shootings should have never happened in the first place. Homeless people are people too. And it's as vital we know about what's happening to the people that are extremely vulnerable in our community, which homeless people are. We see here that Ground News recommends the article here by MinPost, titled Minneapolis Clearing Homeless Encampment. Also, I need to point out that this is the only homeless encampment shooting that I know of. If anyone else has heard of any other homeless shootings, please let me know in the comments below. I will focus on the MinPost article, as that is rated center and very high factuality by Ground News. Titled, Minneapolis Clearing Homeless Encampment. Plus, how a Somali Minnesotan is aiming for the silver screen, more renters turning to tenant unions, and more. Written by Holly Marie Moore. Here, this article is actually talking about clearing the homeless encampment after a shootout there late Monday. And that's important because I'm going to get to the person who is allowing the homeless encampment, or was allowing the homeless encampment, to be on his property. Linked to the Minnesota Star Tribune, we read, the city clears Minneapolis landlord's homeless encampment hours after mass shooting. Subtitle, 4 people suffered life-threatening injuries in a shooting on Hamoudi Sabri's vacant lot. City officials vowed to close it down despite potential legal challenges. By Lewis Cross and Liz Sawyer. On September 16th at 8:35 p.m. A large Minneapolis homeless encampment on private land was demolished and cleared on Tuesday amid tensions between the landlord and city officials who said the site needed to be cleared due to, quote, urgent safety and health concerns, end quote. It was cleared following the second mass shooting Monday on the city's south side, linked here. The shooting occurred at the private encampment set up by prominent Minneapolis landlord Hamoudi Sabri, a parking lot behind a vacant building he owns on East Lake Street, city officials said. Sabri has been in a battle with the city for months to keep the encampment open, ignoring $15,000 in citations and daring them to get a court order. At a Tuesday news conference, Mayor Jacob Frey said the city needed to close the encampment for the safety of those living in it and the surrounding community. Frey listed problems he's previously linked to other encampments, including vulnerable people being preyed on through drug trafficking, human trafficking, and violence. Quote, we would have liked to close this encampment months ago, end quote, he said. Quote, it is my goal to prevent these senseless deaths from happening from the very beginning. That's my responsibility, end quote. Frey said the cleared site will be controlled by law enforcement until the city can obtain a temporary restraining order from a judge, which the city hopes will happen as early as Wednesday. The mayor additionally took issue with Sabri for resisting the city's past attempts to clear the site. Sabri said in a statement Tuesday that his encampment is in response to Lake Street having become, quote, a place avoided by many and blatantly ignored by leadership, end quote. Quote, Uptown has been abandoned. For years, Phillips and Lake Street have endured shootings, displacement, and trauma without the sustained care or urgency shown to other parts of the city, end quote, he said. Quote, instead of emergency response, the pattern has been abandonment and repeated displacement that leaves people more vulnerable to violence, end quote. City officials at the news conference detailed the resources that were offered to encampment residents ahead of the sweep, including shelter. Enrique Velazquez, the city's director of regulatory services, said there were 70 to 75 people at the encampment before the shooting and about 30 after it. When the outreach team offered services, only one person was interested in shelter, he said. Quote, our neighbors deserve better. Our neighbors living in the encampments and neighbors living in the immediate surrounding area around the encampments, end quote, Velazquez said. Below that, we see an image that has the subtitle underneath it that reads, the city of Minneapolis clears a homeless encampment near East Lake Street and 28th Avenue Street on Tuesday. Parentheses, Alex Corman / the Minnesota Star Tribune, end parentheses. The gunfire erupted around 10 p.m. Monday at the site near Lake Street and 28th Avenue Street, drawing a large presence of police, city officials, and onlookers to the scene. Less than 12 hours earlier, 5 people were wounded in a shooting not far from the intersection of Lake Street and Interstate 35 West, about 2 miles west. Here ends the article. Now, it's important to clarify that no links or citations were given by either men. However, again, a landlord is providing a space for homeless people to shelter, and he's willing to take the city to court over it. So let's take a look at this man. Hamoudi Sabri. And just to quickly recap, he is very different from this Fox News anchor who had a different take on the homeless population.
They have given billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection, or something. Just kill them. Or something. Just kill them.
Here in the Sahan Journal, we read 5 things to know about Hamoudi Sabri, who is tussling with Minneapolis over a homeless camp. The Palestinian-American developer says he won't back down from his fight with the city until local and state officials come up with a long-term solution for homelessness. By Subhanjana Das. Here we see the photo of Hamoudi Sabri, with a caption underneath it reading, Minneapolis landlord Hamoudi Sabri, pictured September 10th, 2025, is currently at odds with the city over an encampment on one of his properties. Credit, Aaron Nashim, Sahan Journal. We read, the day after a mass shooting at a homeless encampment on his Lake Street property, Minneapolis developer Hamoudi Sabri was in triage mode, shuttling between HCMC, where some of the injured were taken, and his property, where city crews were clearing away tents on Tuesday. Standing outside the taped-off area near the encampment, Sabri said, quote, as soon as these guys go and are done with this investigation, we're going right in, end quote. If he follows through, he faces an uphill battle over the encampment that has divided public opinion. Last week, 2 days after the city council voted to pursue litigation against him, Sabri spoke with Sahan Journal about his clash with the city, why he's sheltering homeless residents, and what would make him stop opening new encampments. The city council has since filed a lawsuit against him. Here are 5 things to know about Sabri. 1. He comes from a Palestinian family with sprawling real estate holdings. Sabri, 62, was born in the occupied West Bank to a family in the construction business. The youngest of 10 siblings, Sabri moved to the Kenwood neighborhood of Minneapolis when he was 15. He inherited his father's real estate business in 1990 when he was in his 20s. His first property was a duplex at 2701 DuPont Avenue South, which he both lived in and rented out. A father of 3 daughters, Sabri now owns multiple commercial and residential properties across the city under Downtown North Loop LLC and M&S Properties LLC, which is associated with his property in Lake Street. His eldest daughter, Samrina Sabri, is slated to take a role as a chief financial officer in his business enterprises. His brother, Basim Sabri, owns Sabri Properties LLC, which is associated with Carmel Mall, Plaza Mexico, and Yusuf Corner. Earlier this year, Basim Sabri faced mortgage foreclosures on 2 Sabri Properties buildings in South Minneapolis, Rana Village and Carmel Village, for failing to pay $530,000 in required repairs. One of Sabri's ongoing projects is a hospital in his village in the West Bank in honor of his parents. Showing pictures of the rendering of the 13-story building, Sabri says he wants to build a, quote, semi-Mayo clinic, end quote. Quote, most of our money is going to support that clinic. I'm very proud of it, end quote. 2. He wasn't always an advocate for his homeless neighbors. The landlord's childhood in the West Bank shapes how he views homelessness here in the Twin Cities. Quote, I was displaced from my home as a child, end quote, he said. Quote, I lived in rubble for a month. We were looking for food. My dad is a rich, wealthy man, parentheses, but, in parentheses, we had no money, end quote. The memory shapes how he views the way unhoused people are routinely moved from one part of the city to another. But Sabri admits that he didn't always feel empathy towards the homeless population. Quote, when I discovered that they are mentally ill, that changed my whole gameplay. I started getting more sympathetic with them, just when I saw them and talking to them and getting to know them and seeing the cause and why, and when I saw the staff and how the city treats them, and it took me a long time to learn, end quote. Side note, above that paragraph, we see an image of a worker in bright yellow taking down 2 outdoor tents with the caption reading, Minneapolis crews cleared a homeless encampment on Lake Street on Tuesday, September 16, 2025, a day after a mass shooting injured at least 8. Credit, Daman Kuhun, Sahan Journal. Now, he says, he sees himself as, quote, the ambassador for the homeless, end quote. 3. This isn't his first time opening a homeless encampment. Sabri, who owns a property on North 5th Street in the North Loop, where he opened his first encampment in 2021, says he chose the site because it was in a majority white neighborhood. Quote, I love what I do because I create things to change neighborhoods, end quote, he said. Towards the end of that year, Sabri invited the people who were sleeping on the sidewalk to stay on his property after he said he reached out to Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey to discuss the issue, but did not get a response. Parentheses, a spokesperson for the mayor said the city has no record of the meeting request, end parentheses. He said it was a short-term solution while the city, quote, gets it done right, end quote. After several attempts to clear the encampment, the city finally removed the residents in March 2022 following incidents of drug overdose, fires, and accumulated garbage on the site. Sabri even thanked the city for handling the closure carefully. He said he did so because, quote, I used to believe they're, parentheses, expletive, end parentheses, end quote. Then, in July this year, Sabri decided, quote, enough is enough, end quote, and welcomed homeless people to set up camp on his property on 2716 East Lake Street, beside Universal Academy Charter School, marking the second chapter of his tussle with the city. 4. He has a beef with the mayor. Sabri is exasperated with the city's handling of homelessness at large, but his ire is particularly directed at Frey for what he sees as a failure to address the issue. Quote, he wants to do what he wants to do, and he's got some of the lousiest, most unqualified people working in his office, unquote, he said. Quote, he's got to go, end quote. Quote, I am one of the first people who built this city. It's a beautiful city, and I won't let him, parentheses Frey, in parentheses, destroy it, end quote. City officials said they maintained a daily presence at the encampment through the city's homeless response team and the mobile medical unit to offer housing support and health resources. At a late-night news conference following the Monday's shooting, Frey called out the unsafe conditions at the site. Underneath that, we see an image of a man in a white shirt speaking at a news conference. And the caption below that reads, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey spoke at a late-night news conference outside a homeless encampment off Lake Street in Minneapolis, where 8 people were shot on Monday, September 15th, 2025. Credit, Diane Cahoon, Sahan Journal. Quote, with this particular encampment, you probably know there's a long saga with it, end quote. Frey said, quote, if he wants to sue us, he can. If he wants to take this up in court, that is certainly his prerogative, but this is not safe, end quote. Sabri said he has kept a close eye on the encampment at Lake Street, regularly visiting the site to check how many people were living there, drug activity, and other nuisances, and had even hired a former occupant as the manager of the site. The encampment, which housed about 100 people, was overcrowded and dirty, he admitted. Quote, of course it's dirty. They're doing the best they can, though the reason it is dirty is because the city made it dirty to eyesore them, to make them and me look bad, end quote, Sabri said. Now he faces 12 citations for creating a public health nuisance. Quote, the city has provided Mr. Sabri multiple notices to abate the public health nuisance on the property, but he's refused to do so, end quote. Director of Public Services Enrique Velazquez said in an email to Sahan Journal. 5. City fines and lawsuits won't deter him. As much as it may appear otherwise, Sabri said he is not looking to pick a fight with the city. Quote, I'm not here to, parentheses, expletive, end parentheses, fight with the city. I'm here to make things happen. I'm fighting for a mission, and my mission is to get a system that's going to work. The system today is not working. You start a new system. I'll be damned if I come here, but get it done absolutely, end quote. So what, according to Sabri, is a system that is going to work? Sabri has a plan, one that he said he has come up with after talking to multiple people experiencing homelessness. The plan involves working with the county, Governor Tim Walz, and Attorney General Keith Ellison to create a homeless shelter spanning, quote, a couple thousand acres, end quote, outside the city to deter drug activity, along with a clinic and mental health services. Quote, I believe my concept will work, and when they do it, I'm done. I'll shut my face, end quote. At the end of the article in italics reads, clarification. The story has been updated to add details about the city's response to the Lake Street encampment and Sabri's attempts to reach the mayor in 2021. A couple of things to note about the article. Thanks to the subreddit Minneapolis, I found the article link as well as multiple interesting comments. User, now deleted, asked, has there been any progress on figuring out who was shooting at gatherings of homeless people and why? Then user Thrawn as God responded, quoting Chief O'Hara, linked here. O'Hara said that police cannot entirely rule out a connection between the two shootings. Investigators believe that the first shooting was a quarrel that escalated to gunfire, and that the second shooting was related to a narcotics dispute, according to O'Hara. And then another user pointed out that it would be really interesting to know more details because, as user 999rat says, quote, this is what I would really like to know. The shooting came in the days following a journalist on Fox calling for homeless people to be killed. If this is someone removed from the situation attacking those that are homeless, that's a different situation than violence erupting from within the encampment itself. Also, we have people that are more than willing to poke holes in this piece of journalism here. because, as you've probably noticed, the article is very celebratory of Hamoudi Sabri. As user Nimrod _ points out, quote, "I am one of the first people who built the city. It's a beautiful city, and I won't let him, Frey, destroy it," end quote. Sabri, who the article says moved here in 1985 at the age of 15. So, huh? User N-angel-named-Billy responded saying, "And he has built nothing notable or improved the city at all. A slumlord who builds a few substandard buildings, our very own Trump." Another user, gentle_method, commented saying, "Slumlord who inherited his wealth seeks city support to run a shantytown. He has money that could actually open a proper shelter, but chooses to do this instead." And then, final comment I'm going to cover here by user Oh No My Lands, who said, "Rich Nepo baby who claims he was one of the first people to build the city. What the fuck? Why doesn't this dude build housing? He wants the government to write him checks to do it." All very good points. Why hasn't he collaborated with the city on prior projects regarding homelessness, especially since he says this is such a huge issue for him? Why hasn't that prior collaboration or prior attempts at collaboration come out at all? Sure, he may have reached out once in 2021, but you think if this was a real issue to him, he would have reached out more than once. Especially because he is a landlord. Also, underneath subreddit Minneapolis, there was another post that was made regarding this, where it's titled, "City Begins Clearing Minneapolis Landlord's Homeless Encampment Hours After Another Mass Shooting." And it provides a link for the developing story in the main body. After providing text regarding the homeless shooting situation and what was known at the time, around 16 days ago, going into the comments, we see multiple users commenting on homeless encampments and where they're probably going to get reestablished, especially if the legal fight between Sabri and the city continues for a long amount of time. Keep an eye on this, especially if you're in Minneapolis, because if you really want to help homeless people, and especially if you want to protect kids and understand where homeless encampments and how close they can get to schools can be, this is going to be vital information. Especially because allegedly, where Hamoudi Sabri allowed homeless people to encamp on his property, that was only blocks away from a school, which is a concern to a lot of parents, and rightfully so. I also think that comment thread, because that is where I found out about this, Avivo Village. Avivo Village is a homeless housing program that's established. Now, this is from 3 years back, and as to current statuses regarding Avivo Village, I would reach out to them directly. Again, all sources will be linked in the description to this video. You would think that if the homeless problem is so near and dear to Hamoudi Sabri's heart, that he would be working with Avivo Village. Say he didn't want to work with the city. At the very least, he could work with programs like this Avivo Village, where you have multiple comments and multiple users saying, like, this is great. This is a great resource for the community. And this is a great way for people who are down on their luck, aka people who are homeless, to actually get up and have a chance to get out of their situation. You would think that he would be engaged in that kind of program, but he doesn't, and his plan makes no mention of that, which could very well make his entire plan and what he's proposing to the city council, or if he hasn't proposed it, what he could be proposing to the city council, ends up just being another rich man's project. Here is their website. I would recommend looking further into it. However, everything that I've gotten at first glance reading through their website and their statements, it all sounds very amazing. It sounds like it's something that the homeless community, and especially the Minneapolis community, needs, and it should continue to get funding and be supported. And if anyone knows Hamoudi Sabri, or if he ends up finding this video on some weird freak accident, please work with people like these, communities like these, who are established, who have credentials, and have made improvements in people's lives, especially homeless people's lives. There are multiple facets to the homeless problem, and you're not going to do anyone favors by making it your big project and tacking your name onto it if you don't understand how it needs to work. For everyone living in Minneapolis or know people living in Minneapolis, please consider sending this link to them so that they know about this, that it's a resource, and that it's an option. Thank you for watching / listening, and I will see you in the next video.